Good evening, everyone. This is the school board candidate orientation. My name is Shannon Grona. I'm the board president, and I would like for y'all to, we're going to take 2 minutes, and if you would introduce yourself, briefly tell us your connection to Northeast, if you have children in the district, if you're in the education business, and why you're running. And I'll start with you. Sorry, I can't see that. Is that Jacqueline?
Jacqueline, yes. Is it on?
It's on.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Klein. I'm running for Northeast School Board for position 2. I am a lifelong San Antonian. I have lived in the district for 16 years. I have 2 school-age children, and I just look forward to making a difference in the district and helping to improve the lives of children in the district and make it the envy of school districts everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diane Villarreal, and I have been here forever. I was born in Texas, so I'm a Texas girl. Been in San Antonio for 46 years. Lived in the same house for over 30 years. And the reason I am running is because I want to make a difference. I'm here to be of service and to make the difference in the lives of our children and, you know, help hopefully improve their lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marcia Landry, and I am a lifelong resident of San Antonio. Excuse me, San Antonio. And I grew up on the Northeast side, went to Northeast schools, and we now have 2 children in the Northeast School District, and 5 grandbabies who are, most of them already started in the Northeast School. So I want to be a part of their future, and I want to be have a place at the table and have a voice.
Thank you. Are you going to introduce yourself?
My name is Joseph Trevino. I don't know if a lot of you know, I'm a former Northeast ISD board member here at NEISD. I'm a long-time family member. I have 1 graduate and 1 still in school here at NEISD. I'm here because my community asked me to be here. As a former board member, the community reached out to me because they're tired of coming here and being limited on how long they have to speak or what they have to speak about. And yes, it gets ugly. As a former board member, I know. But when you deny the community the right to come in here and speak, somebody has to step up. We have the 4 of us. I will. And I'm here because my community has asked me to. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our goal this evening is to provide you with an overview of the roles and responsibilities of a board member. A school board member is the ultimate volunteer position. Board members do not get paid. This truly is a service to the community and a labor of love. Oh, and okay. Hi. Will you real quickly introduce yourself, state your connection to Northeast and why you're running?
I'm Rhonda Rowland. I live in the Windcrest area, and I'm running for District 2.
Okay. Thank you. The Texas Association of School Boards, or TASB, describes school board service as one of the purest and most important forms of public service one can provide in a community. It's rewarding, but it's also very time-consuming. It requires a high level of dedication and teamwork. So what does a school board do? The board provides direction. We ensure that we provide resources so that staff can do their job and students are successful. TASB describes a school board as building a bridge between the community and schools. Board members listen to the community and are a voice for the students and community. Board members advocate for the school district at the local, state, and national level. Board members are elected to govern, not manage. And the board governs, not individual trustees. One board member cannot change the district's focus. The only power the board has is to take action on an agenda item during a duly called meeting. Our most important goal is to provide the very best learning environment for each and every student. We are a very diverse district of almost 60,000 kids and over 8,000 employees. Our decisions as a board must benefit the diverse student population of the district. School board races are nonpartisan by design. We should not impart our own political or personal beliefs, agendas as trustees. Instead, we are expected to come to the table to make decisions that are best for all children. And I want to talk a little bit about the time commitment. It takes time to prepare for our meetings, which involve reviewing the agenda packet and presentations. Members need to come well prepared to discuss and take action on items during the meeting. We typically have 2 meetings a month on a Monday night, and they last about 3 to 4 hours. There are months when we have a meeting every week, and sometimes during the lunch hour. During the budget season, we have meetings once a week, and we meet on different nights of the week to adhere to the required posting notices. So for instance, on a Thursday night, we'll adopt a budget. We attend all graduations, and we have 9 ceremonies. 8 of them are in a 3 or 4 day period, and we typically have 2 or 3 per day. We also attend conferences such as Summer Leadership, which is a Thursday and Friday. We attend the annual TASB convention, which is either in Austin or Dallas, and runs from a Thursday to a Sunday. And they are going to add San Antonio to it. We get invited to many school events, and we try to attend when we can. It's important to note that when you are elected to the board, while you are elected by your single member district, you represent all of any ISD. So it's important to attend events at all campuses. As a new board member, you're required to attend training sessions in order to meet the training required hours, and that's about 20 hours your first year. As a new board member, you will attend district orientation, where you meet with all of the chiefs and their direct reports so that you can get an understanding of each of the divisions. The board has 3 main jobs: adopt policy, adopt the budget, and oversee the superintendent's contract and evaluation. The board policies and procedures are the governing documents by which the school district runs. Policy development is focused primarily on the goals and desired results for students rather than the daily operations. A careful, orderly process is used in examining the adoption of new policies or the revision of existing policies. Each policy, whether new or existing, undergoes 2 readings in a public meeting before adoption. This enables the board to ask questions about the policy and revisions before adoption. Our board policies are online for the community and staff to see. Another responsibility of the board is the adoption of the budget. We have a series of board meetings in May and June where we have budget study sessions. These sessions outline the district's current financial needs as well as future expenses and revenues. During the budget study sessions, we discuss the general fund, debt service fund, and school nutrition services fund. We also discuss compensation and benefit plans. We also set the tax rate. We do not set the value of property. That is the Bear Appraisal District, and that is something that is really hard for people to understand when their taxes go up because their appraised value went up. That we don't set the value of the property. We do set the maintenance and operations tax rate that is used to fund the daily operations of the district. And we set the interest and sinking or debt service tax rate that is used to fund the principal and interest payments on the district's outstanding voter-approved bonds. The third primary responsibility is to hire and evaluate the superintendent. We oversee the superintendent's contract and conduct evaluations. Board policy outlines the procedures for the evaluation. The board also conducts a self-evaluation to measure our success. To guide our work in the highest ethical manner and to preserve public trust, we follow a code of ethics. The code of ethics outlines principles for equity, stewardship, conduct, integrity, commitment, and student-centered focus. The code of ethics can be found online in the board operating procedures. I encourage you to go to our website under the Board of Trustees tab and review the board operating procedures. These procedures guide the work of the board. They outline the role that board members play, to include how board members respond to community concerns and campus visits. As a board member, we have strict confidentiality requirements. Everything discussed in closed session is confidential, and there will be times that we get information that cannot be shared with anyone. There is a great amount of trust among the board that conversations are kept confidential. Social media. If you are active on social media, remember that while you are an individual, people know you are an elected official. We can't post inappropriate pictures or say inappropriate things. We have to hold ourselves to a higher standard than the general public. I want to close by revisiting the importance of the board working as a team with the superintendent. We sometimes call this the team of 8. Highly effective trustees operate with a governance mindset. In order to be a cohesive, unified team working together, we must create a common vision, driven by a shared, relentless commitment to the learning of all students. That is what our community expects. I will now turn it over to Dr. Sean Micah, Superintendent, to talk more about the board and superintendent relationship.
Thank you, Madam President. So as Mrs. Grona discussed, the role of the board is governance, and I want to talk just a little bit in the context of the board and the superintendent relationship. So as we've been working, as those of you up here know, and maybe you all know as well from watching, the board sets a strategic role, or plays a strategic role in setting the vision and goals for the district. Our board right now is engaged in a process of planning and setting and identifying the priority and objectives for future school years. This strategic planning process provides me, and therefore the staff, with the direction for my work as the superintendent. I, along with the staff over here to my right, to your left, identify the tactics then that we're going to use or deploy to meet the board's vision and goals. The board also provides oversight of our work to ensure that we're meeting the identified goals. The oversight occurs in a board meeting. The board meets, as Mrs. Grona talked about, usually, traditionally, the second and maybe the fourth Monday of the month to conduct business. Meetings are held in the evening, and we typically start at 5:30, even though this isn't a duly called meeting, but we started at 5 today. As Mrs. Grona mentioned, there are more frequent meetings during the budget season. The board will begin budget study sessions in May and adopt the budget at traditionally a Thursday meeting near the end of June. We currently have 3 budget study meetings scheduled for May and June in addition to the regularly scheduled board meetings. I do also want to add that during the summer, even though we typically don't have board meetings, we do go ahead and set them because the board is, while I make recommendations to hire, they ultimately have the final authority, so that we sometimes have them during the summer as well, just so that we can get some folks hired. Board meeting agendas are posted publicly 72 hours in advance. That is by law. And board members receive a packet from myself. It's actually from Miss Turner over there to my right there on the end, to receive a packet for them to prepare for the meeting. I regularly communicate with the members or the trustees, whether it's to answer their questions or provide updates, I'm sorry. So traditionally, there's a different set modes that I use. Text is usually for things that are urgent. There may have been a staff member that's passed. It's something that they need immediate attention. Maybe a school is in a lockdown. Email I also use. That's usually to provide updates, usually around non-pressing matters, things that when they get time they can read. I do want to note, we discussed this for the trustees up here. BBE Legal, that's online, and you can find it, which really governs questions outside of a meeting. Just for everyone to know, should there be, trustees always have the right to documents, records, or any type of information. That policy guides the timeline I have to fulfill it. What we did go, as we went through BBE legal, when a board member does ask for things outside of a duly called meeting, there's a process that we have to follow to do it, and then all the trustees get a copy to those answers. As Mrs. Grona mentioned, we are a team of 8. I am very blessed to serve with these folks up here. We work together to meet the needs of all of our students in the school district. We have many resources available on our district website, as Mrs. Grona spoke about, that you may find helpful. So at this time, I'm going to ask our Executive Director for External Relations, Miss Deb Caldwell, to come up and just walk everyone through the website, just so you know where to find some things.
Thank you, Dr. Micah. So we are at neisd.net. This is the home page that's on the screen. If you go to the About NEISD tab at the top, it gives you information about the district, and there is a link to Board of Trustees. Dr. Micah and Mrs. Grona mentioned board meeting information and agendas. There is a link right here for board meetings. That will show you the schedule of board meetings, information about making public comment at our board meetings. The agendas and the videos are linked here. You also heard them mention board policies. You click on the policies tab. It actually does go to an external site. The Texas Association of School Boards manages our policy. You can put in here a search term or a policy code if you're interested in reviewing the district policies. Mrs. Grona mentioned the board operating procedures. That is linked here. And it takes you straight to the PDF. In your book that you received, as well as if you stopped by and picked up a packet, and I have extras if you didn't, there's information about the campaign finance requirements that you as a candidate are required to make. You will find here on our website those campaign finance reports. We are required by law to post those, so you can see those by election. So there will be a new section that says May 2022 election where your campaign finance reports will be posted, but you can go back and look at previous elections that have been posted. Again, in your packet, there's information from the Texas Ethics Commission on the timeline of when those reports have to be filed, as well as the instructions on how to fill out the form and the instructions for what you have to report, as well as blank copies of the form. So if you need that, I do have extra copies here, but that's all from the Texas Ethics Commission. I'll definitely get that to you, Mrs. Skiba-Varial. So that concludes what I have to show, but again, the Board of Trustees page has multiple information.
Ms. Caldwell, would you just go back to the board policies page,
Yeah.
please? Just go ahead and type in I said BBE. Just type it in. I just for the group, just to see when you search it, it actually comes up with two. It'll come up with a legal, which is by law the board doesn't even adopt it. It's just a part of legal. The local, as you can see there, is actually the piece of the policy that the Board of Trustees is charged with adopting and monitoring. So just so you all know, sometimes you'll also see exhibits and things like that within here. Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. All right, so the school district does provide each individual trustee with their own email address, and that's usually the first letter of their first name, followed by a dash, followed by their last name at neisd.net. Each member is put onto a group email, board@neisd.net, so they get all of those. Just a piece to note is because you are an elected official, all of those emails are subject to the open records requirements, so anyone can ask to see them. Peggy Turner, who I pointed out earlier to my right, is the executive associate and the liaison to the board. So one of Peggy's jobs, among many other things, is to keep up with the board calendar. So Peggy puts all sorts of different events, meetings, activities, and things like that on there. And then all we ask is to let us be aware of what events you're attending, if you can't attend, so forth and so on. And that's really one of those big pieces that Peggy does. And with that, Mrs. Grona, there's really not much more I have to cover this evening. Unless there's someone up here needs me to cover.
So I'm going to open it up to questions, if any of you have questions of me or Dr. Micah. Yes?
I have a question because I watch your board meetings. I think you guys are fascinating, by the way. What I would like to know is there are many times you take breaks and then you contact your legal team over certain, if there's a big discussion, you contact your legal team. And then what happens after that? You guys decide that you just want to table it all the time? Or do you actually get a response from your legal team? How does this work?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's very rare that we adjourn into executive session to contact the attorney for legal advice. But yes, typically what happens is if we have to go back there and ask him a question, then we do come back out here and we, depending upon what the board members want to do, we'll either take action on the agenda item or we will take no action.
Shannon, I think maybe she's asking on our agenda, we go back to closed session.
Oh, are you talking about the very beginning, when I call the meeting to order and then we adjourn into executive session for about 45 minutes?
No, actually, the last meeting that I witnessed, you ended up having to go back and contact your attorney for some reason, and there was a big discussion, and then you went back into another room, and then you came back and there was no resolution to it. Is this something that the attorneys have to go back and look at and actually determine if there's an issue with it, and then you guys pick up that discussion
Well, I think
later on?
he answered the question that we had, and then we came back and we continued the discussion on the agenda item, and then I believe we took action on
Yeah,
it.
we did.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. I was just curious.
Okay, yeah, but I would tell you that that's probably the first time in a long time that we've done that. It's not typical behavior. Any other questions? No? Okay, well, I thank you all for coming, and I think you all have been given some information, a booklet maybe about school board and candidates, and you all have your paperwork. If you need something from Deb regarding paperwork, she may have it available for you. It's on their thing. So if there's no other questions, we appreciate you coming and your time, and I'm going to adjourn this portion of the meeting at 5:22.
I hate how big this box is. I don't like how.
I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The time is 5:32. Item 4, Board Workshop. A, consideration, discussion, and possible action on revisions to board goals. Dr. Micah, are you going to introduce? Or
Yes, I am. Sorry, I just took a sip of that coffee, and boy, that is some strong coffee. So this evening, we have brought back Dr. Gibson to come back and finish up the strategic component of it. And so, Dr. Gibson, I know you and Miss Caldwell have been talking. They've got looks like some pieces out on the table, and I'm going to assume you're going to go through all of this with us.
Absolutely. Good to be back, and thank you all for having me and continuing this important work. Since y'all have had the chance to kind of see me, I'm going to get us right on into the work. Is everybody good with that? So you don't need any introductions or anything. We did have a little bit of a pre-read because we had talked about the governance course, so I will reference this in just a little bit, and we won't. I'm not going to sit here and read every page to you, but I've highlighted some key things that really line up to the things that I just heard getting here a little bit earlier and hearing the candidate forum, and then definitely with regards to your balanced scorecard, that you have a draft somewhere near you, if I understand it, and then in alignment with the work we're going to do tonight, we're going to get you out of your seats here in just a little bit, and 4 different sections for your 4 different priorities. And I'll tell you more about the process here in just a little bit. So this is a really, really good first draft. I know it doesn't look like a lot right now, but this is the way this starts. This thing is going to probably get deeper and wider as Dr. Micah starts his listening tour. That's my term. I think he may use the same term. Some districts have put it on a, 8.5 by 11 landscape, but some have gone, just kind of depends on what font you want to use. But as you do your work, don't worry about it kind of blowing out a little bit. it's very common to get more on it and then come back and crystallize it back down. So it starts out like this, and then it kind of goes out, and then you start constricting it back into, because you have to get all these critical pieces in as you're listening and learning from your front line and from your community. You have a first draft. I mean, there it is. So we've done well. You've got a first draft. So this is not a start from scratch tonight. This is a value add. And so I think Dr. Micah and Ms. Caldwell, I think it's very smart to say, let's do one more value add to make sure we have some clarity from the board. And we tried to make this, I'll go ahead and introduce this, and then we'll look at the book study. And there's a quality tool that's called an is not. So if you know what the premise is, that if sometimes it's better before you start trying to describe what something is, to start with, well, I can tell you what it's not. In the absence of it, this is what it looks like. And so the is comes because you know what the is not is. So it's called is not, and it's like a 25-year-old quality tool. And I appreciate Ms. Caldwell because she took that is not, and we were brainstorming, and she said it's almost like, what is it and what is it not? So when we look at 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, there's a poster like this out in the front, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. And we're going to take a few minutes and let you think. You don't have to produce a sticky note, but we're encouraging you to produce a sticky note. It does not have to be correct grammar. It does not have to be perfectly worded prose. This is your opinion. It's all the trustees' opinion that we're going to try to extract out in kind of an expedited fashion. And then we're going to place those sticky notes. And I'll run through this again in just a second, but just to kind of give you a begin with the end in mind. So you're first going to say, well, when I look at academic growth in core areas, which is what we settled on the last time we were here, this is what that means to me, this is what it is, and this is what it is not. You don't have to give an is not. You don't have to give an is. But at least try to give an is or is not, because then we're going to get 7 opinions. And then as you stated a while ago, an individual trustee has no authority under state law, right? And so I think it's prudent to do an exercise like this to try to reach consensus from all 7 of what it is or what it's not. And then that way, everybody's a part of the process. If there needs to be a healthy discussion around why one feels like it is and one feels like it's not, we'll have that. In our book study or our book review, one of the traits, and in last week's or last month's discussion on staying in the strategic role, one of the hallmarks of a board member that's staying in the strategic role is they collaborate, and then even if the decision didn't go the way they wanted it, they respect the decision of the full board. And it's almost like we can disagree agreeably, and then the vote happened, and there's no reason for any more conversation because the vote happened. I said what I said, and I don't have any authority other than, with the board in total. All right, so again, I'm going to run through the process here in just a little bit, but does that make sense? And we're going to work through all 4 priorities with this. You got 5 minutes with your sticky notes. You come place them on the boards. Then we'll take a break. Then we will kind of cluster them, and we'll talk to the board about the themes. Yes, sir.
And Dr. Gibson, I'm sorry, I wanted to add something. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll notice the executive staff is here. They're really here to listen. I said to them as you went through this process, as Dr. Gibson described it, I wanted to have them present and hear firsthand the discussion you all have, because it's super important that we all listen to understand what you're defining it as it is and what it isn't, because in the end, once this gets turned over to us, that's going to be up to them and myself to then draft it up. But I do want you to know they're here. They're going to be listening unless for some reason you call upon them for a question. Otherwise, their job tonight is really solely to listen to your all's discussion. Sorry,
That's,
Doctor.
no, don't apologize at all. That's a really good thought. And even though we're going to try, the process tonight is to narrow down consensus, to make note of the raw comments with the senior leader team, I think is very prudent. I think that's a great idea, because there's nuances sometimes as you reflect back on your notes, as we keep getting narrower and narrower and narrow, those notes I think would be very helpful. So at least everybody act like you're taking notes while we're talking.
I do have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
So are we being specific as to, for example, if, where I would say, where we have under students, that first section, where I would say speaking specifically to 1-4, like is it directly, or do you want it as
Yeah,
broad
so we have.
or more broad? Directly to that one point.
Yeah, so 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and then around the corner, we'll take these to the side and debrief, and then 2.1, 2.2, 2.2. So yeah, in Ms. Grona and her very calm board president voice said, "How long do you think you got in you tonight, Dr. Gibson?" And so I think if we, it's really about energy, and we don't want to push past, like the energy level. I think a couple of hours following this process, hitting the marks, take a break, let us do a little bit of work while you take a quick break, stretch your legs, then we'll debrief what we captured on all 4 of those, then we'll go to the next one, and then we'll go to the next one. And I think priority one typically takes the longest, because that's like where a lot of the moving parts are, right? So don't try to do the math on, oh my gosh, that took an hour, we're going to be here 4 hours. I think the other 3 typically are a little bit, because that's why that's priority one. So do you want to start with just a quick overview of that chapter 1 and 2? Because I think, and thank you all for getting on this book, and I know that when you look at some of the materials that I've given you, this book is referenced heavily, right? You can just see it. So we laid this out in 3 or 4 other books, or it's not necessarily books, but it's research bases, because almost all of these are meta-analyses to one extent or another. And yeah, they fill in the gaps, some with their notion, but I'll go back to Buck Gilcrease and Greg Gibson, who kind of tried to design this in a way that was meaningful. I know I've said this to you all, but we started with everything that we felt like was wrong with strategic planning in our 30 years each. So we made our is not list first. Like, this is what this will not be. It was interesting. The result turned out in our mind without beyond a shadow. We didn't say let's go create balanced scorecards all over the state of Texas. That's not it's just that we kept coming back to, well, the balanced scorecard does that. Well, the balanced scorecard does that. And then it made me feel good actually to read back through chapter 1 and 2 over the weekend, and maybe a little bit while I was driving here, just a little bit. But it made me, I just glanced at a couple of key points. I was thinking about it as I drove up here, but to just anchor back to, and just quite frankly, I had forgotten that Fullen and Campbell had talked in terms of the specific terminology of strategic versus tactical. We actually drew that from another work more directly, the one that we cite. But again, a best practice is a best practice. So they're drawing this real clear distinction between strategic and tactical. And, I heard it mentioned tonight, the strategic role and the tactical role, and I think that's fantastic. So if y'all want to do this way, if it's all right, I'm on page 3. These are just like some highlights, but and this is just the introduction. I understand, and the pre-reading was chapter 1 and 2, so I'm outside of the pre-reading. So in the introduction, though, I love that Campbell and Fullen say, too often actions have become stereotypes, whether justified or not. Individual trustees are often cast as the bad guys, boards as a whole are seen as the bureaucracy that's removed or unable to act responsibly, and the superintendents are cast as victims of meddling or micromanagement. In this way, superintendents are absolved of building genuine working relationships with their boards, and we end up with variations on a we-they relationship, with the best-case scenario being from superintendent saying, my board is great, they leave me alone. I mean, he's describing like what's not. Like this is just, it's awful that it's kind of coming to that what's equated with the best board is the board that leaves the superintendent alone. And what we're trying to work on together, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, is this symbiotic relationship between the strategic role and the tactical role. And this team, quite frankly, through him, and it's appropriate that they're here tonight because again, if we build it right, the board commits to the strategic role, the tactical team commits to the tactical role, which kind of sounds silly because they're living that dream every single day, but there's a communication piece back up to the board. If the board's primary work is to oversee management, that's the definition of governance, is the oversight of management. Well, how do I oversee something if I don't know what's going on? If I can't monitor it? Like my sons occasionally say they want to build fence on our place, and I'm okay with that, but I'm going to oversee it. I'm not just going to say, down there half a mile, right? I'm going to go, it's this straight line, I've already marked it. I'll bring y'all some water back in an hour, and then I just go to the top of the hill with binoculars and just watch, to make sure they're even on the straight line or even working at all. But I'm trying to get in the strategic role and let them go, because that may not be a complete good analogy, but it is kind of similar, to get up to the top of the hill and look with the binoculars. That's the strategic role. So the tactical team should provide the information that makes the strategic team feel like they're on the right path. Now, this is not the case here, but I'm amazed in 60 districts now. And again, I'm going to underscore this, it's not the case here. But so when we start talking about the review of data, which is coming down the road, like that's way down the road, Dr. Mike is already thinking about what that looks like. There has to be a real high level of trust between this team and that team on what data is reviewed related to these strategic objectives, on what schedule and at what level. And I hate to make it this concrete, but Ms. Grona, if you're going to do a priority 1 report a year from now, like if all this is finished and I'm really jumping on out to the end of it, or this fall, let's say, the board really has to reach agreement that we want it to be 15 minutes long, 30 minutes long, or an hour long. Like it has to be that concrete, because y'all have enough data to do a full day workshop on any one of these strategic objectives, right? You could literally go that. So where I'm seeing some boards slip right now is they're not being clear about what they expect on the data review sessions, and then there's frustration. One trustee wants 2 hours and one trustee wants 5 minutes. And that's, so one wants the executive summary to the executive summary, and the other one wants all. So you need to reach agreement at some point, again, several months from now, on what that looks like. That will help with the strategic role versus the tactical role. Because you've got to agree as a team, how much information do we need to feel like we're overseeing management and not trying to do management. Then it's on the list that we went over the last time, and I probably pulled some of that from the book that we're looking at tonight, that if trustees, individual trustees, I think it's one of the 10 signs we put on that a trustee's having trouble with the strategic role, they're doing their own research or bringing their own documents to share with the board. And whether it's intentional or not, what the message that sends is we don't trust the data that they bring. That's just the way that's interpreted. If I was sitting there, that's the way I would interpret that. And what's interesting is that's usually not the case. It's just some trustee is really good with data and they want to show that they're really good with data. So to be at the strategic role, it's to think about what data is needed and then ask the tactical team to provide that on a systematic basis. That's trust. That's trust. That's correct. And so there has to be, we've probed trust with this team as a team, right? Dr. Mike is probing trust with that team as a team, and then there's this trust between the two teams. And I think it's good when you're starting a process like this to just think about that. And that's all, or how do I get the governance mindset? So there was a district the other day, and I went early on the meeting, and they were talking about why the junior high girls' locker room was painted candy apple red. I'm not kidding. This was a pretty big district. And may happen here, may not, I don't know. I don't watch your board meetings for sport. So then when I got up for training, one of the trustees said, that didn't feel like that was in the strategic role. And I said, it wasn't at all. That was all tactical. And so they said, so you're just telling us that we should just keep our mouth shut? And I'm saying, no. You should ask, what is the process for paint selection? Not, why is that locker room red? Oh, okay. And I think she was kind of trying to trap me. If y'all get the point. I see his nodding. So that's the strategic way versus the tactical way. So, and it's a fine line, and it's a dance. It will never be perfect, but you have to it has to be like burned into the forefront of your mind. We're strategic, they're tactical, and we're going to have this symbiotic relationship. If we design this right and launch it right, we're going to have this symbiotic relationship where we're staying in the strategic role, but we're hearing the information to make sure that we feel comfortable that we're staying on track. Moving forward, on page 6, so tonight was a little bit about politics, right? We have people running for the board. And so I love all this thought, and it's actually on 4, 5, and 6, on politics without good governance and then politics with good governance. This is not a requirement, what y'all did tonight with these individuals, right? It's just something you're doing because you're trying to set a tone for politics with good governance, right? Not politics without good governance. So if that bulleted list on 5 and 6 to me is just, and I love how they crystallize pieces of this, but politics without good governance peaks right at the election, caters to special interests, offers superficial bumper sticker style things. It can be sincere but weak on implementation, harmful when lacking good governance, and there's no lasting effect of what's going on. I think it'd be cool a year from now at an election, at that meeting, you're running through your status report on your scorecard, right? I'm sure that's what you're already thinking, because then it's like, here are the rules, and then we're in year 1 of the implementation of the scorecard, and here's our status report. And so I thought I was going to get a fence built around the bus yard out on 281, or something. And it's really not about that. It's about, here's how sophisticated our tracking system. So y'all get the concept of politics with good governance and politics without good governance. This book was written well before politics had kind of crept into local school boards so much. These words were true when they were written, but they have never been more true than they are today. They hit it. I mean, they got it right. And today it's almost like if you're not trying to do this, there's just, like, don't take the bait, because it's just going to keep being dangled out there. It's going to be hard not to take the bait, because sometimes the bait's just going to walk in, right? It's going to be stirred up before y'all ever have a chance. But I know y'all are monitoring that. Yes. And yeah, and that some of the efforts statewide that are being monitored closely is to try to politicize this by almost building a structure where you have to go through a primary and all that, and that should be like a bell cow, for us that no, that does not need to happen. There's some, I think the CRT or mask, no mask, or vaccine, no vaccine, all that I wish I could tell y'all that, like, it's peaked, but I think there's more coming. And it's just going to be like this drip, 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 drip over the next few years. So, Ms. Williams, to keep it nonpartisan is really, really critical, right? And I love what you said. If you run for a district, it's great, but you still represent the whole district. And that's your effort to keep it nonpartisan. Okay, so on page 8, the figure 0.2, negative drivers and positive drivers. So I'm not going to read this list to you, but I love the notion that, a negative driver is to actually focus on the board. And it's a little bit, it took me a second and I maybe still don't understand it, but it's not really about the board. It's about this concept of governance that we're striving for. If we're focusing on what does good governance mean, and then how we're constantly working on it. And I know you'll have board operating guidelines. I heard them referenced a while ago. Later in this book, they're going to assert that as a part of those board operating guidelines, you need to make a collection of board norms that center around this concept of good governance. So it's like, let's get down to when we say good governance, what does that mean? What's the working definition of that? And then what's our list of norms that, in addition to your code of ethics, again, you're going above and beyond. Your code of ethics is your code of ethics, and that's really, really important. But it almost still is a thou shalt not list. We haven't written a thou shall list. So the good governance norms would be this is what we aspire to do, as opposed to this is a list of things we shouldn't do. And you kind of need both. You need the bumper rails, but then I just, I tell my children all the time when they're grappling about something, okay, now I know everything that you're against. Please tell me what you're for, and then I can understand your position better. I'm not for anything. I just want to protest. Okay, you're a protester then. They just went through college. They're getting over it. I had one that was in college and called, I'm at a protest, it's great. And I could hear everybody screaming. I was like, that's fantastic. I don't even know what we're protesting, but it's fun. Okay, sport protesting, great. Yeah, that's right. Okay, then on page 9, I love this concept of the difference between coherence and alignment. This is, I think, really, really important, because the scorecard is going to work heavily on alignment. And if you read that, it's saying you need alignment. What can happen, and I think this is what this bottom of page 9 is all about, if you're not careful, the data, let me just use me as an example. I can get really just jazzed up about the data. Like once we start getting it and keeping it and lead indicators, lag indicators, and Greg Gibson can go into the world of nothing else matters but the metrics coming out of okay, I can go there real fast. So I have to think back on this concept of coherence, especially in an organization that's a public education, because it's a human endeavor. And so this alignment occurs when the main pieces are aligned: goals, finances, professional development, etc. Coherence is more subjective. In a nutshell, alignment is rational while coherence is emotional. And they're not saying one is more important than the other. They're just saying keep a line of sight on both of those. So sometimes Robert Westbrook had to say, okay, we got it on the metrics. Now let's just talk about the human element. Okay, you're right, Mr. Westbrook. That's exactly right. But we were constantly, trying to. It is a human endeavor. Of course, I believe that we can measure satisfaction and engagement. And we're better off if we try to look at the aggregate and not just at one-offs. But maybe this is a good summarization of that. That. You don't generalize from anecdotal because you got 8,000 employees. So it's hard to generalize with one conversation. But that one conversation is really important because that's one person's perspective. So you don't say, no, just fill out your survey and we'll talk to you later. I think that's what this is saying. So coherence is bringing everybody together. Coherent, that's emotional. And then monitoring how that's going at the aggregate level with data. That's more of the alignment. This is the framework for an aligned system, though. That's what this is. It's absolutely the framework for an aligned system. All right. Oh, darn, that was just the introduction. Let me go a little faster. Okay. Don McAdams, the kind of the godfather of boards, we were talking earlier, he's in here, Houston trustee. I love that on page 15, simply put, governance is steering, management is rowing. I mean, that's a pretty good way to look at this. Now, the difference between extending that metaphor is Dr. Micah's got to get on the rowboat, and he's got to get off the rowboat and run to shore, you know, and get where are we going, you know, like the mission. So and it's this team also, like they're constantly measuring where does the ship need to go, but then they have to go motivate those that are rowing the ship or boat. All right, I am going to go a little faster. This stuff is fun to me. On page 16, I'm going to hit a few of these high point things. So that little sidebar over there on page 16, governance is not just passing policies, it's what boards and superintendents do together and how they do it. That's really important. I think that's really, really important. It's this coherence making and this relationship building. I'm going to just, let me just pause for just a second and go back to the strategic versus tactical the last time we were here before we start our exercise. You know, I said there needs to be enough collegiality with this team that if any one of you ever felt like you were getting out of the strategic role and into the tactical role, that you would I think I gave Mr. Pivito as an example, I think maybe here, but he was really good at, okay, I listened carefully, I'm pretty sure we're in the tactical stuff now. You know, like that's him saying it from the board. So have any examples of that, or are you seeing, I heard you use the language a while ago with the candidates. I think that's great.
I actually did do that at last board meeting when we were talking about policy. And if you go back to 15, it's at the bottom, it talks about governance is about defining the what of the organization, and administration is focused on the how policy gets implemented.
Yes.
So I kind of felt like we were trying to get into the tactical role when we were talking about adopting policy update.
So that's a really...
So if you could maybe speak to that, because it was a policy that, you know, obviously the board does policy, and it was about a committee that reports to us. So.
Gotcha. So whatever the structure of that committee, this was just my general kind of gut feeling response. So I don't know exactly which committee, but I'm assuming, as Deb said earlier, there's probably a legal policy that outlines some of the stuff around it, and then TASB sent you a local policy to review.
It was the update 118.
So, in SCUC, my experience, if you don't accept the TASB base version, you know, like A or B or C, they sometimes give you choices, and you do your own, it becomes an X policy is what it's called. And so, in other words, if you look down at the bottom, it says A or B, or it says X. So if you've chosen X, that means that you've put something in there that TASB attorneys feel like exceeds what you would have to do in order to. So not to badmouth my previous district, but when I arrived, we had, 85 X policies. And, I felt like maybe we needed 5 and a few curriculum things that were kind of unique. Like we didn't need 85, we needed 5. So we started trying to work on those. And my predecessor had not put much structure, and again, it's not badmouth, they just, in the absence of having tactical structure around the work, like here's to use your example, like the committee structure, to me that's tactical, and that should just be however the superintendent defines, here's how the committee, that's the tactical piece. And it should align to the local policy, and then it should align to the legal policy. But the tactical piece on how we do that, as said right here at the bottom of 15, is up to the tactical team. Anytime I say
If I can just say something real fast,
Yeah.
Mr. Hiller, I'm sorry. Y'all, you have to use your mics when you're speaking. Just a reminder, okay? Because we're recording, and it doesn't pick you up if you're not using your mic. It's hard, I know, in this environment, but, okay?
No, if it's okay, Mr. Grosh, just to close, I don't want to stay long because the conversation was on the EHA local, which is curriculum-based, but it was basically a cut and paste. It had 2 steps from the legal. I thought we need to put further fidelity with a couple of steps, not the committee each, but how we're going to make sure the community involvement, the review process. But to me, that is local board policy, which is absolutely in our core governance to set the tone for Dr. Mike and them. And obviously, we had different agreements. Mrs. Grona said, hey, we're getting tactical. In my opinion, these are our local board policies. This is how we shape and guide in addition to this balanced scorecard that should align to this. But so we had a disagreement or different perspectives on it.
Right.
And she asked that question. But to me, it was a cut and paste of the legal. So I thought we needed to maybe beef it up and talk about some key elements. And there's a balancing act so that we can make sure our local values are reflected, not just a straight copy of the legal piece. And I think it was
Right.
already an X that was added by the staff. It was just adding a couple steps to the process of how things should be done. But that was just perspective. I think it's
Well,
important
I
'cause we
mean,
have a
it's-
bunch of policy reviews coming up. I want to make sure that we're all aligned as a board in that expectation, because obviously the staff gives us recommendations, but we are also there to engage, add, and modify as well, I would offer.
Right, and that's a helpful clarification. I still gonna kind of stick with, there's a reason that TASB gives a base version, and it's because their attorneys have just scrutinized it. It takes so long to get those updates. And like we're waiting, this law went into effect in September, it's because they have teams scrutinizing. And my personal opinion, I'm not trying to generalize this to all districts, is when you get outside of that base version on TASB local, you're on what's adopted in policy local, you're making yourself a little more susceptible to scrutiny. That's my personal opinion. Because all those attorneys have reviewed that they said that's the lane that this should be. And then and again, I'm not trying to meddle in y'all's business, but and I think it's this is a good point in this book. There's tactical components to a committee for sure that the superintendent may have in a memo, like this is the structure of the whatever committee, ABC committee, and that is the tactical piece of that. So that's thank you for sharing that as a concrete, I've heard now the strategic tactical. Now the coherence making, I want to go back to that, is not to say to not have a conversation about it, right? The coherence is, but let's all listen to each other and here's why I think Dr. Micah, as you're considering the blah, 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 this is my opinion, one trustee of why we might consider X. And, another trustee may say, I disagree with that. Now he has to put it in balance on the total and try to figure out how to navigate, the committee. That's his job, and there's 67 of his jobs open right now in the state of Texas and growing every day because it's just an inherently complicated thing. But anyway, that's a great example. So thank you all for sharing that and let me kind of speak to that. And you're right on that. To go back, just to kind of summarize it, good governance is about defining the what, tactical team is working on the how. How is it done? Okay, real quickly, 5 major, on page 17, commitment to good governance, that's happening right now. Shared moral imperative, I would argue that's what you're doing in your scorecard. You're establishing your moral imperative, right? Like these are the things that we don't waffle on. Number 3, governance mindset. I think that kind of lines up with the notion of a good governance handbook. Coherence makers, that means talk it out, get coherence between each other and have a unity of purpose. And then that lead from the middle is a systems responsibility. And the book goes in with Singy on, and I think what they're talking about, the lead from the middle is, in a district this size, your tactical role is actually arguably divided into 2 tiers. So it's kind of like central office tactical, and then how many campuses, Dr. Micah?
74, really,
Okay,
when
so-
you look at programs and
Right,
things.
so then there's a tier of 74 administrators that are part of that tactical team that if this really matriculates to the front line, that 74 is pivotal. Is that right? We can do this all day long up here, and then that 74. And I know you're cautious in the sense that if we're not bringing that 74 along, we're just going to put a poster up on the wall or something on the website. So that's going to be a little slower to do, listening tours and all that, but it's bringing that 74 along and the creation of it. Is that fair to say? I've heard enough to know that's, because that 74 is pivotal. Great teachers in the classroom is important. That 74 are pivotal to whether this works or not. So anyway, kudos for that work. Page 23, the guideline for serving on the board. You'll see some of this in our work. Reserve judgment. That's hard. Listen empathically. Stay focused on the content and try to ignore the rhetoric. That's one of the things I like about the scorecard, because Ms. Winkley can say, I thought we were having a 1.3 debate and now we're off somewhere else. Can we get back to 1.3? You know, and it's just like, that's the content. The content is the strategic objective. Number 4, always be true to the norms. So we've already talked about the norms. 5, do not take differences personally. Again, that's very hard to do, to just don't make assumptions and don't take things personally. You know, that's really hard to not do. And then number 6, down in the middle of that one, irreconcilable differences or behaviors that repeatedly violate the agreed upon norms cannot be allowed. And we just had that conversation. Like, the board has to police the board. That once we have the norm set and once we have the strategic direction set, then there's no other police. It's a self-policing gig. Like, you have to police each other. And I think to some degree, good governance is similar to trust. This is now just a Greg Gibson. You won't find it in this book. But if you're not working on it, it's getting worse. So if you're not working on governance, like if you just do a once a year or once a quarter or once, it has to just be permeate. Everything that we're doing has to be working on good governance. And when I say getting worse, I just mean it doesn't stay static. So if you're not working on it, you can't magically think that it's going to stay at a high level of good governance. It's just going to kind of start its journey. It atrophies to the earth. It's the same thing with trust. Trust never stays static. And if one of these individuals wind up on the board, I don't know the structure of who's running for whom or whatever, and I don't care. I mean, I care, but I don't care. Okay. But now the team dynamics go to 0. When one member changes, group dynamics go to 0. So then trust just goes boom, all the way down. And it's in the sense that we don't know. We got a new board trustee. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means it's an unknown. So you have to check it, and then you have to, okay, we've got a new team now. We have to work on it. Okay, let me go to chapter 2 real quick. I want y'all to feel good about page 31, and we'll probably just conclude with this and then see, because if I get into that systems thinking stuff, it might go a while. But look on page 31, look at it through this lens. So having a good governance mindset means, and you see this bulleted list. So here's a quick exercise to kick off the next step. Look at your balanced scorecard. Look at those 6 or 7 bulleted statements, and think about it through a balanced scorecard lens for 2 minutes, and then share with me your observations. And look at your priorities, your specific priorities on your scorecard. So no, I'm not giving you a lot of time, but we've got some work ahead. So always keeping the board's focus on the children. When you think about it through the lens of the balanced scorecard, what are your thoughts? Priority one, right?
Number one, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
priority
at the
one.
top and it's where it should be.
That's right, priority one.
It's
Yeah.
mirrored. This whole list is
That-
just a mirrored
That's right.
mindset.
When I again, rereading, thank you for this, and then I was looking at, and so if you look at the second one, watching the budget, priority 4. Look at the third one, long-term goals of the organization, column 2. That's the whole list on column 2 that we're working on tonight. Building and maintaining strong governance infrastructure. That's the glue that holds this whole thing together. That's what we've just been talking about. The 5th bullet, supporting the staff and creating a positive culture. Where is it?
2.
Yep, priority 2. Holding the organization accountable to the community. Where is it? Priority 3. And then keeping the constituents of the organization informed and up to date of the work. That's the structure we were talking about, the reporting structure and the communication and all of that. So it did me so much good to think about this structure of a scorecard and then just look at it going through Campbell and Full, and it's just check, 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 check. And it's every one of them. It's not like we hit 2/3 of that list. It absolutely wraps around all of it. Yes, ma'am.
I think it's amazing if you think about it. I'm really proud of us. I really am. That it was not something that we studied to be able to create this, to create our plan. And we met here, we sat, we talked, we went back and forth, we bounced ideas off each other and words off each other. And that's what I love about this next exercise, because I hope that if I'm trying to convey something and maybe I can't find the right way to do it, somebody else on this, at this dais will be able to do it,
That's
to help me find it.
coherence
That, I
making,
love that.
right? That's coherence making that we just, that's
I
tonight
love it.
is coherence making. And you're right, Ms. Winkley, if we all look at the world through our knothole in the fence. We can say we don't, but we do. So this is putting a stepladder behind the fence for all of us to step up over the fence and talk about the whole vision, and then get clarity in one document. I know I sound like a broken record sometimes, but we always say we want people to get on the same page. In a year, you're literally going to have the page. That's what's beautiful about this. Okay, thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to share anything from the book? Kind of gave you a whirlwind tour. As I paused for a second, Ms. Caldwell said, hey, be sure to remind them. And I said, hey, how about you hold that thought and you remind them, so come here. I didn't say something a while ago. Tell them, she's going to restate the directions and we're going to facilitate together.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Gibson. So for this first part, we are just going to be in that first row, number 1 students. So you have Post-it notes at your desk. You are going to, for 1.1 academic growth, you will write a Post-it note or multiple Post-it notes that say, what is it? Then you'll have a Post-it note or multiple Post-it notes that say, what is it not? Don't put what is it and what is it not on a single Post-it note for us. Please separate them. And then when you are ready, you've completed all of 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, we have them up here. And you will put your Post-it notes on. And then Greg and I will, Dr. Gibson and I will organize it along themes, see where there's commonality. And if you can't think of something, to your point, Mrs. Winkley, if you can't articulate what is it not in your viewpoints, then yes, hopefully your colleagues are able to help you through that process. So we're just working on that first row right now.
And again, it's not an exercise of prose or poetry or beautiful workmanship. It is just, this is keywords and phrases, bulleted out, keywords and phrases. We'll do coherence on that later, and we'll make it look nice later. All right, everybody good? And is 10 minutes enough to post these on all 4 of them? Is that a fair?
We'll give it a shot.
Yeah, let's
That'll be-
we'll try. We'll set a clock for 10 minutes. Then take a break when you get them all on, and then give us just a little bit to organize themes, and we'll report that out, and then we'll go to 2.
Can I get an extra notepad? I've already finished one.
Have you?
Go to the next
We can probably get you some, actually, it was probably.
box.
Yeah. We have more Post-it notes if you need them. All right, we're going to power down up here and let you guys work for just a little bit. I'll take a coffee. That's strong. It's strong. That's the way I like it. Absolutely. Thank you.
If a teacher were checking, what would the answer be? This is something I made for everybody but not, but this I found useful because this is the EdCo Chapter 4, which is like, says this is what we're doing. So I got copy, I was doing some of this before. I thought we were going to do the board goal, but I also use that as thinking about stuff, just to kind of think about some of the key stuff, if you find it useful.
Oh, I see.
What if you can think of what it is, but not what it isn't? Okay.
Or vice versa.
Okay.
Y'all take a break if you want to while we. The women are finished, just saying. What? The women are finished, I'm just saying. There you go. The dudes are still working. Still working. So far, so good.
Start circling C on all my answers.
I was just noticing that the female trustees were finished.
I didn't write this one. Mix mine in for another minute.
No, this, the symbol thing is over for now. But somebody uses red ink still.
I put them on the wrong one.
All right, that's us. It's 10 minutes. So, okay, thanks.
I'm slower here.
If you want to take a quick break and give Ms. Caldwell and I just a couple of minutes, we're going to look for themes and Okay, if I can get, I know you launched into 2, and I love the efficiency a lot, but let's debrief 1, and then we'll go back to 2.
Okay.
So what, yeah, and so the product tonight, again, is a value add. Everything that's currently on the draft that you have, which is a good start, great start, is draft, and it will be draft, Dr. Micah, for months. Right. Fair to say? Okay. But every time we do a value add, we're trying to, let's use the word coherence. We're trying to get better and better coherence about what do multiple viewpoints look like with this. So on 1.1, with what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 responses were all about ensuring that gaps are closed and that children make at least a year's worth of growth. So 6 fell in that cluster. Now, what we're not going to wordsmith tonight, but the frequency of them does help, right? Because if something happens 6 or 7 times, that's got to be a part of it. All right, and then I think, Dr. Michael, what you and I had talked about is I'll give you like a summary, then you and Ms. Caldwell are going to look at plugging that into an actual document that goes forward to the community. So when the board worked on this is what they said it meant, and this is what they said it didn't mean, because what that does is help community and staff and everyone else get some crystallization. And I want to go back to the reason I think this approach is appropriate, and if you look at our book study, it would validate it, is we're kind of starting with some of the tactical thoughts, but then we're putting it in a board lens, and then we're taking it out. And I know I'm repeating myself a little bit, but if you go out to the community, this is my opinion, with blank pieces of paper, you wind up with a list of 80 things to do that it's hard to say we're going to do all 80 of those. So this is a different approach to say, no, we're going to kind of narrow it down, and we're going to listen to you, make sure it fits in these objectives. If it doesn't, we may come back to the board and say we missed something. I think you would probably do that, right? Correct. I think we missed, I heard this so much, I think we missed it on our first round. So I want us to have a conversation about another objective under 3 point whatever. And so that door is still open, but we think this is the best start. Okay, so you had the closing the gaps, and then you had another category, generally speaking, that it's graduating every student at grade level or above, and then students will be encouraged and challenged to meet full potential. So that's slightly different, and it's a little bit more on academic growth than closing gaps. This is saying that we're pushing kids to go deeper, and then we had some that basically specifically said that, dig deeper, critical thinking, demonstrate exemplary performance, and then well-balanced and prepare students for success. And then there's a link to this with 1.1 for quality professional development. This brings up a really good point. I'm going to hold this one here. You're about to start working on 2. That's on, when we start thinking this way, that's a priority 2 thing. Because it's like the adults, priority 1's the less than adults, and then priority 2 becomes the adults. So anyway, very good. Any questions on what this is all really good value. Your biggest response were addressing subpopulations and closing gaps in at least a year's worth of growth. And that's kind of what you would think from something when we're saying academic growth in core areas. So that's a good start. And then I love the is not. It's not a class rank. It's not homework. It's not checking a box with testing. It's not a single test score. I'm just kind of reading them as they appear here. It's not meeting acceptable standards. So in other words, it's not the test or the structure around all of that, and it's not multipliers. And I hate to do this, but it's written in a certain ink that I know who that is. Can you elaborate on that, David?
With class rank and AP and,
Oh,
and people
gotcha.
sort of using that for a sense of academic growth that isn't necessarily growth.
With your permission, I'm going to combine your 2
Yep.
together. I'm not going to combine your third one, but I think your multiplier and class rank kind of go together.
About the same thing.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to stick those together. That'll help me understand it. So not homework, not a check a box on a test, not accountability, and not class rank. So that's helpful, right? I mean, we have a clear lens of this is, and then now we have a clear lens of is not. All right, good on the coherence on 1.1? I got the green light from Deb.
Dr. Gibson, did you say not accountability at the last part? I mean, you're talking about, just to make sure I understand that, because I mean, obviously, we do have to have accountability. Are we talking about the state accountability?
Yeah.
Is that the last thing you said?
Yeah, the way I interpret this, and it's almost like, I wouldn't think that someone would put this is not if they didn't put an is over here, that it's really about closing gaps and subpopulations, et cetera. If we do that, we're not doing it for an A rating, we're doing it for a
Okay,
kid.
so we're talking about the race versus the accountability being the performance of the student.
That's right.
Is that,
If
I mean,
we're
whoever,
just-
that's why I'm assuming but.
That's the way I
obviously-
read this, and I think that provides clarity for this, because instead of like we're all jazzed up on the accountability rating, we're just saying, no, if we take care of kids, that comes.
Their student growth. Okay, just want to make sure I understand.
That's
Thank
the
you.
way I understand that. And I like this approach because there are several districts and superintendents out there that, and this isn't meant to badmouth anyone, but, they're kind of anti-STAR, and I get it, but you can't not take it. Or I guess you can. You'd have to forfeit your state funding. So if you could forfeit anywhere from 40% to 80% of your budget, then everybody opt out. I think what I'm reading that is the STAR test is an assessment, not the assessment.
Yes.
That's the way I read that.
So I just want to make sure I was understanding whatever that intent being, and we'll have our own specific metrics we'll walk for accountability in the student performance area. Okay, just want to make sure I understood. Thank you.
Okay, so CCMR, College Career Military Ready, we left in the notes heretofore much discussion on CTE. So one box is around encouraging students to do more CTE, let kids know that it's okay if you don't have a path to college right now, that it's not just like that's the only path to the future. Provide skills and opportunities, and just making sure that there's clarity about life after high school, not just a blank stare. Here's your diploma. Good luck. There's a vision for after that. Then there's another cluster on programs are supporting CCMR, that's what it is, that it's readiness for what doesn't exist today. That's a really good insight. We may not know, like it has to be fungible, right? This can't just set a hard list. We have to explore, what the needs are out there. And then quality programs. Then there were two other comments: get more students to take dual credit AP. That's the first C in the CCMR. And then growth in something of interest. So one thing that's interesting about 1.2 is that you're really getting 3 objectives in one. And I think we talked about that the last time, and that's okay, because those need to be tracked together. The beauty of that is that the state can help us with some data on the back end of this, because they have some criteria that are generally accepted as pretty good criteria for students to be declared CCMR, College Career Military Ready. I mean, I've scrutinized that with a lot of districts right now, and everybody's like, no, it's wrong, and then we get to the end of it and like, that's a pretty good measure after all. So it doesn't mean that has to be the ultimate measure, but that does exist. There's some data sets that already exist. So what it's not determining what a student's next step for them. It's not keeping programs that are obsolete. It's not a measure of how many programs we have. I'm assuming but the quality of the programs and their alignment to the certification afterwards. I love this. It's not shop class. That's crystallizing to the point, and it's not a single path or way for every student. It's I guess it's a ubiquitous program, but it's based on student need and desire. All right, that's a really good clarification. Everybody good with that one? Want to add anything now that you've thought about it? Everybody good? A lot of is on 1.3 and not much is not. That's okay. So let me do the two is nots. 1.3, student involvement engagement. It's not placing limits on students, and it's not things that look good for a college. So that's the is not on student involvement and engagement. So it's clustered in 4 basic buckets. So what it is inclusive and understanding students' desires, and then listening, asking students, and then asking students. So it's basically listening and being responsive to what we're learning from the students. Okay, that's the first is. And then the second group clusters around choice, awareness, opportunities, well-balanced, wide scope, academic and extracurricular, and just straight up, it's more clubs and opportunities. So that's kind of your expand opportunities. So your first bucket is listen to them. Second bucket is expand opportunities if needed, under the assumption of once we've listened, let's be open-minded about what that looks like. Then there's some singulars here. Student ownership. It's global citizenship. So that's really good insight. That's why we're doing this. And it's to help students remain in school and stay on a path. And then probably a link to the next one, it's a sense of belonging, which probably links up to the well-being. All right, anybody want to add anything to 1.3? Yes, sir.
One thing I wasn't able to necessarily put in there, I think I used the word opportunities or something like that, that I think written in there is the ability for all students to have some kind, whether it's extracurricular or whether it's student voice, that every student has an equal opportunity to participate in something. And I go back to, never remember the district that we listened to at TASB, but they talked about how whatever high school they had, every kid during the day, they had a 30-minute or 45 time period where everybody engaged in something other than academic. And it was, the one they talked about was a crocheting class. And it was really, there was a teacher who loved to do it, and she had 2 students, and by the end of the semester, they had like 120 kids that wanted to crochet. But it gave every student the ability to do something and feel
Connected. And
connected to that school. You get that ownership, you get that buy-in. So anyway, just
Yeah, that's, there's one of them in red up here that says opportunities.
Well,
So
that's what I was.
I made a few notes on it.
maybe expanding on that
Okay,
one, but
fantastic.
just that we have kids that
Yep.
don't always have that
Yeah,
opportunity.
I was in a district the other day that they said they wanted to do this just to validate what y'all have put on here. And they were almost going to drop their 1.3 altogether because 80% of their kids were transportation students. We just can't do this. It's unrealistic. But then it's like, okay, whoa, hold on. We're thinking about this through the lens of your current master schedule. Like, is there a way? And they started peeling that back, David, and they got to, we need to do a 0 thing. And I'm not, for them, it may be the only way they can even do 1.3. You're saying it may be a tool to utilize. All right, and again, that's tactical stuff that comes later once the strategic stuff is set.
I thought
No, but-
Mr. Jarrett was going to do a crochet class. That's why I brought that up.
No, but as you discuss that helps us understand where you're coming from. Okay, that's. You've never seen me sit this quiet, but I mean, truly, this is what we need. I mean, I can see Mr. Jarrett's over there; the wheels are turning as we're thinking. Because I'm going to come over here in a minute when they go to do, because I want to talk with you about something they spurred in my mind.
Well, and what you're making me think of, Dr. Mike, and please know that your scorecard is about to just go wider and deeper, as we said earlier, and we've said this is about narrowing down, but right now it's about collecting a wide array of thoughts. Then come back. We can't do all of this, maybe, or maybe turns out if we redo it, but you have to get it captured, and you've got to go out and listen, do a listening tour, and then you're going to decide we would be better served to do 5 of these well than all 10 of them not as well, right? But you're going to have that discernment over the coming months to make that decision. So 1.4, well-being, again, we'll work on what exactly that means. These words help us. So you've got to, let me do the is not first. I think that's better. So it's not placing limitations on assistance for students. It's not one size fits all. It's not students falling through the cracks. And it's not any and all programs. It should not encourage, it should not encroach, thank you, encroach on parental responsibility. I got the hard part, not on parental responsibility and responsibilities. That's what it's not. And then we have a cluster on mentally healthy students, trusted adults on campus, well-being and understanding what's important to mental and physical health, ensuring students remain healthy. So it's health, mental and physical. School counselors are mentioned, access to school counselors. Every student is a priority, and acceptance is another category. And then we have some one-offs focused on the education mission. It's the support of the education mission, of what we're here to do, open environment, students feel supported, and then reworking grading, homework policy, not just busy work, but you can use that as improving mental health. So several one-offs on that one. This will be a fun one to try to kind of encapsulate. But anyway, any questions on student well-being? There is a sense of several occurred up here. I mean, it's understanding what's important to students and what they need for mental and physical health. I mean, that's kind of a crystallizing sticky note up there. All right, anything else you want to add on 1.4? Since you had a jump start on 2, 5 minutes?
Can we talk about 2 before we get
Yes.
going?
Thank you, Shannon.
Capacity building. We were struggling to remember what that meant. And so I'm wondering, but I think then we got to it, which I think it was talking about if you have, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you have it's forward thinking for a teacher. Say, does a teacher want to be an administrator down the road, or do they want to get, is that what capacity building is?
Well, it's any and all, and this is a really broad term, that's why it's on here. So it could be, do you have the tools and resources you need to do your job, and are you trained to do that? But it's also like, do you have a future vision, as you said?
But I remember this one pretty vividly. This wasn't just about teachers. This was about all employees. You all discussed everybody. This is a custodian. Do they understand the pathway to being a head custodian? That we're showing almost 9,000 employees there are multiple paths forward in the organization, and we're going to train you to do it.
And you're right, Dr. Micah, the term is broader because for teachers, it's usually professional development.
Yeah.
And so instead of using professional development, this is a broader term. Thank you, Dr.
So
Micah.
is there a better way to word that? Because
I mean,
When I thought of capacity,
Capabilities?
when I looked at capacity building, I thought about new programming.
Yes.
So, for instance, a new program that we did was ICSI, but we had to build the capacity to do that, get a director, get enough staff. And
So plain language, I'm sorry.
No, and I think you were about to say, maybe answer my question, so why don't you finish your thought?
Well, it should, so if I look at that, it's really tools, resources, and training to do your job.
Okay.
Like that's
I guess
capabilities.
should our objectives, should our community be able to pick up our objectives and know what that means?
That's a really good point. And so I think we'll just make note, Dr. Micah, of this discussion around capacity building to maybe help the community understand exactly what that means.
And I think last time I answered your question, Ms. Swinkley, I think we talked about having a list of terms, because this is a 3 to 5 to 7 year document, so everybody knows what, when we say efficiency or effectiveness, what we mean. Because over that 3 years from now, when a new family or a new teacher, someone goes, oh, that's what the board meant. So, because this is obviously a long living document, but I think that's one of the key terms we will need to define clearly, whether it's capabilities, professional development, regardless of career path type stuff, that we should clearly define in some sort of glossary of terms, because that's a really good question. What does it mean?
Right, and just remember, it's a draft.
Yep.
So you don't have to have the perfect word this evening. As we go about listening to community give us feedback on this, I mean, we talked about this the other day when I engaged the cabinet in a question. I said, you need to mix it up, and it made them all uncomfortable because I said they couldn't sit with their typical colleagues. I said, but sometimes the solution to your question comes from the most unlikely place, and so that's it. So we'll listen, and we may get a word that we can't even think of, and a community member says, and we're like, well, that's duh. That's what we should be doing, right? So that'll be part of this process, is continuing to massage this document.
For now, is it okay with everyone? We're leaving capacity building there, but in parentheses, we're just saying tools, training, and resources. Is that, because I saw his nod, yeah, that makes sense to me. So we'll just put that in parentheses for right now. And then Dr. Mack is right. We'll find out what word really resonates in the public. Okay, everybody good on that?
Because to your point, Mr. Hilliard, not only do you... Thank you. To Mr. Hilliard's point, not only do we need to understand it, it needs to be picked up from a community member that's online, that reads it online, that it makes sense. That's the piece. It should speak for itself, not correct.
Translate everybody from the front line to the
correct.
to the staff. Yeah.
That's really, really important, because we have a tendency, because there's so much jargon, that we just get too fancy. And there's a reason, a time, and a place, but if the board reaches consensus or cohesion around that we want it to be a public document, at the end, we'll probably have to do a scrutiny of plain enough language, for the majority to understand. Unfortunately, the national average of reading level for citizenry is going down instead of up. And that's just kind of a sad state of affairs. Okay. We're going to, 5 minutes are set on the clock. You're on the clock, trustee.
Wow, that was fast. That was multitasking. That was fast. That's good. sure. Well, I'll just enter them. These all is, I didn't really come up with it on this one. This one is really, that's more of a commentary than it really, I don't know, like, I can't find that balance, and I don't know where that's belongs. Yeah, and I'm just trying to figure.
There's a cluster around.
Okay.
Just read that, so we've got some friends in that area.
Yeah, just trying to figure out, this one was actually harder than so simple yet so hard.
Okay, same drill as before. Can you pause for just a second? Okay. These are going, again, I'm going to stick by my original that we have completed the longest one, priority one. But these are going to cluster tighter, I think, maybe until we get to 4. And I actually want to say a prelude about priority 4 and before we dive into priority 4 here in just a second, the financial stewardship. So on 2.1, recruiting and retention, there's one around quality staff. Of course, we want to bring in high quality. We want to find the right people for the seats on the bus. We want to seek out and then keep good teachers and administrators. We want to think outside the box when we're looking for them. And we want to make sure that the path is accessible and not intimidating to come into our system. So there's a lot, that's probably the biggest bulk of what the responses were. Other than on recruitment and retention, some competitive benefits, I'm going to start saying this faster, pay, creative perks. So there's a cluster of being creative and being competitive with salary and benefits. That's a big block. So you have a big block on like your structure for going out and getting these high quality people and how you could do that, and then what we do once they're here. So one of those is the recruit, one's the retention. And then the one-offs, so to speak, were making sure we have quality facilities. That's an interesting connection to this, so that when they come in, they have a quality place to work, and then make sure that we're welcoming, and then strong leadership training, which might be more of 2.2, but if I'm going to make the assumption that if that exists, it could be a recruitment tool to come in because they know we have a strong leadership development program. I think that's what the reason that's here. That's a real interesting observation. So it's not limiting your team, it's not filling seats just to fill seats, and it's not only focused on salary, where there is not. Anything to add? Going once, going twice on 2.1. On 2.2, which is capacity building, which we're noting as tools, training, and resources, it is training, which can be straining, leadership development, but training your leadership team. So someone wanted to say that's part of this capacity building. Let's not forget about that. The biggest cluster down here is really reinforcing the conversation we had that this is new skills for all staff. There's like 10 is sticky notes down here. There's consensus around all staff, and then assessing what you have and assessing what you need and addressing the what you need. So there's a big cluster around those. And then someone in red shared succession planning. Are there 2 of them? Okay. No, it's your handwriting. I know it now. But it's succession planning. That's a really good point. So on capacity building, you're also, you're the skill set to do the job you're at, but are we cross-training enough that, we have people that can go into different roles? That's a really good observation. So I love this, what it's not tunnel vision, it's not placing limitations on staff development, and it's not the quantity of training. It's not quantity. Fair enough? Good on 2.2? Those were really good clarifications. Not that the others haven't been, but what's going to be challenging with this is there's some really good one-offs in this.
Well, yeah, but I just said this to Mrs. Grona. So I was looking over at Mr. Jimenez and Mr. Jarrett because I could see them discussing, but we just talked about this at Cabinet. And I'll tell you, if they are so incredibly tightly coupled to one another with what Cabinet just discussed versus
great.
what you all just discussed. I mean, there's
So that's alignment between strategic and tactical.
100%. Like
That's
it is almost a perfect mirror of the discussion that happened.
That's great, and I agree earlier, the fact that you're getting to hear it raw, and because we might have taken this to you later, and you went, "Oh, sure." Dr. Mack is just trying to make us feel good about our conversation that we had at CAB. So to see that parallel, because again, that's alignment between the strategic perspective and the tactical perspective. Not that you can get this done without that. It's a lot easier when there's strong alignment between the two teams. Because there's going to be little things you have to navigate through in the coming months. If there's generally like 75% or more alignment between the two teams, that's going to make that journey just a lot easier. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be easier with that alignment. So 2.3, engagement and well-being. This is so clever. So it's not listening. I had to read that twice. Okay, so it's listening. That's a little exercise in philosophy here. Okay, it's not having programs that don't provide what staff need. That's kind of back to that quantity. We just do it to check a box instead of listening. By the way, your biggest cluster, this is beautiful, is around listening to your staff on engagement and well-being. So let's listen and be responsive to what we're learning and not just do a program. And I'm going to just stop with that because that's what this is really saying to me. Like the biggest bulk of is clustered around listening. And if you look, because we listen, we're providing support, we have a sense of ownership, and we have a sense of inclusion. It's almost like the others come because you're listening and you're constantly monitoring that. So anything to add to 2.3? Everybody good with that? Okay, what we're doing is Deb's taking pictures of them. She's texting them to me. Y'all are keeping this. And then we'll go to work on the themes afterwards. But like this 2.3, it really shook out. Just to use this one as an example of what I was just talking about, this one's like your big push that you're giving, that we're listening and we're responding to the needs of the staff around engagement and well-being. That's where this is going to shake out, and that's great. If I may, since we're started on 3, but if we do this the way we've been doing it, you're going to start on 4 before I get a chance to talk to you again. Okay, there's a possibility, and I think that's a good thing. So my experience with developing this scorecard is that 1, 2, and 3, the perspectives or priorities of 1, 2, and 3 shake out with some pretty concrete things. And then 4 shakes out a little more abstract and may initially be about better understanding the financial perspective and stewardship, communication, before you start getting to some metrics and things like that. Does that make sense? So it's more about transparency and this shared understanding of this big picture with the budget. Yes, ma'am. What was it? So you don't want to do it? Is that what you're saying?
She's going to do Cliff Notes.
I'm going to write those down on my sticky notes.
Okay. Well, I didn't want y'all to go like 1, 2, 3, and you felt like this. It's so concrete. I have an idea. I know what it is. I know what it's not. So if you may not have as many thoughts on 4, and I think that's okay.
Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to, don't panic if you don't have as many thoughts.
And so can I ask a question?
Yes.
Should we change the word? I know I'm
Now,
getting.
this is what tonight is for. Seriously.
Since we've got 3 S's, should 4 be stewardship, so then it's 4 S's?
It's up to you guys. I mean, stewardship.
I know we'd had that conversation about 4S's making it easy to remember because then it's translatable. And stewardship, I'd say, would be better than spending because obviously we are spending money. But it's the stewardship of the taxpayer money and the resources. So I think I like that idea personally. I agree with you, Mrs. Groen. I don't know what the other members think, but I think that might be an easy way to
Yeah,
do
I think
4
there
S's.
was several people that mentioned last time they wanted that 4th S, not spending, but something. So
Stewardship is a good word, I think.
Probably a good one.
Well, stewardship works. I mean, actually, it's probably the most accurate term. You know, my only question would be, do people understand it? But that may be a case of explaining what stewardship is. And the explanation of that's kind of good because you're saying they're your resources. We're entrusted with delivering with your resources. That's why we called it stewardship.
Or is there a different word?
That is the word.
Okay.
Because we're not, it's not our money, it's their money. It's their resources. We're trying to be good stewards. You know, when the owner was away and it was entrusted to those that stayed behind, were we good stewards of the owner's land while they were away?
I think
So-
it just sounds like, I agree with that word. It just sounds that we're being really, like, truly transparent in what we're doing and we're being good stewards. And it does. And then also just that we're doing it with fidelity. And I think that sounds important. And going forward, it might, I can see where it can cause a little bit of confusion. But I think once people know what that really is, and that sounds like we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Well, one thought, I think we're on a tight enough schedule and we're clicking along really well that we had like a concluding activity of time allowed, and it won't take very long. But we're doing is not, what we're not asking you because we were worried about time is why that is important. So we're going to do the why thing, and not on all 13, but on 4 things. Like, why is it important? Then what that does is that it helps Dr. Micah think about, so yeah, we have a priority 1 is students. Now, you all got a decision to make. Do you want that to just say students, or do you want it to say students, excellent student, student growth? You know, like, now, I don't do it now because your process is correct to go listen before you decide that. So all I'm saying is it could be that you have a phrase for priority 1 as opposed to it just saying student. So student something. So it could say stewardship of, materials and finances, or something like.
Oh.
But don't do it now because you're putting too many words up front when he's trying to go listen. Like, we just need to hold it with the place setting right now. So it could be that it says stewardship, and in parentheses we just say financial resources, or something to help there be clarity as he goes out. Just a thought.
Yeah, and if we need to put a couple definitions at the bottom of the sheet as Dr. Micah and the staff go out, we can say stewardship means this briefly, just like the stakeholders were very clear who the stakeholders are. I mean, kind of pretty clear, but if there was any question for the average person reading this for the first time, they go, oh, okay, maybe just to help the process along.
Well, just real briefly, here's a definition of stewardship: the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care.
That's pretty good stuff. That's pretty powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
So I would like to change it if everybody
yeah,
agrees
well, I've
with
made
that.
a note of stewardship somehow being in there. I think that's good. Okay, everybody ready for 5 minutes?
Yes,
Okay,
sorry.
5 minutes for 3, and then we'll go to 4.
still there like at least 20 minutes.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that, every year, that pickup line.
it's longer. We even asked if we could just walk. Should we just walk to a car? And they said it's too far.
So we're gonna, y'all plot ahead on 4, and then we'll debrief 3 and 4 together. How about that? So, yep, just keep on rolling. You're on a roll. Keep going.
Did we finally wear you down? And-
No, we're good. We're good. I just don't want to interrupt y'all. Keep. Yeah, we're clicking along.
I can get some chocolate. Hey, Dr. Micah. No, I have. I mean, I had them for redistricting.
Which one?
Tried to.
So put it on the table and make us.
Yes, sounds good. I like it. Yes, Madam President.
That's fair, right? You walked a long way around.
I did a
You like what?
dissertation with M&Ms and
said.
This is
Oh,
three.
this is 3.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not done with 4.
Oh, you.
Where are your shoes? My feet are so cold in this room, but I wear my fuzzy socks. What Madison gave me. Will you send a picture of it? Oh, wrong one.
You're getting your steps in.
Yes, I am coming back for
Earning your
another
kick,
one.
yeah.
I'm hoping we have another exercise where we have to get it up.
Hey, it's tax season, so I'm talking to Paige like every 3 or 4 days now. Like, where's this down to? Dude, bring me the blah, 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 trucker supply. Okay, all right, got it.
I'm so
He's
mad at
good at what
myself.
he does.
He really is. I knew you were coming in, and I told myself last week, oh, remember to stop at Alamo Cafe to give him some cookies and for you to take back to. And we were in Hawaii. We got back yesterday morning at 10 a.m. Yes, and I'm still not like,
You're still
I'm
got
still not a person.
Yeah, I flew, I guess the last time I flew overseas, I took 15 girls to play in a soccer tournament in Sweden. And, oh my God, just 15 girls for a week alone, you know, would be, so, and then in Sweden itself, and Lander, they put the boys and girls in the same, like, you know, and I was just like, I pulled a park bench over in front of the door going to the girls, and I slept for 7 days on the park bench in front of the girls area.
And all those mothers and fathers thanked you.
They did. They brought me food and everything else the next day. But yeah, it was a long trip. Okay, here comes, we're gonna get the 4s on, and then we'll debrief both of them. Chocolate. We'll just call it Energy Boost. That's 3. This is 3. Sorry, 4 is gonna be.
I bet.
She just landed a couple hours ago.
I'm not gonna let you complain about having fun.
Yeah, really. I just have to look at all the flavors. It's always fun. I wish I could eat it all. Without being oversick.
Yep, thank you.
Actually, no, no. You're saying it. You're doing math and problems, you know, right?
Ms. Grona, are you ready for me to plot?
Yes, sir, go.
Okay. So we, just to be respectful, I know you guys have been here since 5, and so we're going to try to put a bow around this.
Yeah,
So
that'd be
I'm-
awesome.
I'm going to debrief 3 while Ms. Caldwell works on 4, and then I may get her to help me debrief 4, and then that way there's no lull. And then we're going to do just a final exercise to put a bow around it. So this is just an observation, so and this feels really good. So what I'm seeing is a theme about listening. So now, student relationship and family relationships and community relationships, but there's a pattern emerging throughout. So this is like a comment, sidebar, editorial, because we're seeing this listening. So you hear a lot of organizations talk about being learning organizations, and that's good, but it's great, but sometimes, what they mean is that, we're really good at professional development. Now, I'm just using that term. So we're a learning organization, meaning we're really good at just delivering training. And that's important, especially as we talk about capacity building. I personally believe that with my experience working through the Baldrige program, that the organizations, the best organizations in the country, that talked about being a learning organization, they almost never said learning without saying listening also. It was almost like magic. Every time it was just, we're a listening and learning organization. We're a listening and learning organization. We're a listening and learning organization. What's cool about this, that's my big fancy word for you, cool. What's cool about this is that we're seeing this pattern of listening being important. And I think there's alignment between what Dr. Mike is sharing earlier, like there's this alignment between the tactical team. And so anyway, that's what's good about an exercise like this. So we see that alignment on being a listening and learning organization. All right, so on 3.1, someone said, this is student relationships, and someone said, this is job 1. And so that's what it is. It's job 1. So in other words, saying this is really important. So I put that up kind of by itself. The biggest cluster of sticky notes are around student voice and responsiveness and listening. That's what made me think about the comment I made. So that, again, that feels really good. Creating opportunities for students, and I would almost draw a connect to that listening, creating opportunities, building relationships through that. Student achievement. Oh, it's communicating student achievement. So part of the relationship with student relationship is to let the community know how well they're doing. Okay, that's really cool too. I'm just going to get stuck on the term cool right now. That's a really good. And then acceptance. Then there's a couple of one-offs that are really powerful, but it's student relationship is acceptance and student relationship is transparency. That transparency may go back to that sharing out. Again, it's easy to know. Is that what that means? It's the sharing out to...
Yeah, that we're open.
Okay.
We don't sugarcoat it for them.
All right, I'm going to put those together. That's helpful. I'm going to stick those together. So it's not only extracurricular. It's not saying it's not only that. It's not always selecting the top students to be the face of the district, and it's not ignoring students. So fair enough on that? Any additions to student relationships? And I really like our priority 3, student relationship, family relationship, community relationship. I mean, that's the gamut of that. And as you remember, we had talked about it being that's our customer. Like if we were for profit, this would be our customer priority. 3.2, family relationships. We have 2 of 12 of them clustered in 2 groups comfortably. It's about so family relationships. It's about involvement and opportunities. Not just the PTA program. More parent volunteers, more opportunities, quality engagement. So this is like not just the 1 meeting a year check. We had our annual meeting, like real opportunities for involvement. And then we have another big cluster around listening and listening to our parents and being responsive, or to our families and being responsive to what we're hearing. Parents are partners. We're being responsive. We're being transparent. We're listening. Then family relationships, another cluster was around opening doors, welcoming, staying or choosing in the ISD, and having resources for students in need or crisis. And then there's one on proactive. Does that fit in that last group, being proactive? Yes.
100% it's red.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. No, I think that was, to me, that goes with sort of the listening and learning. Is that,
okay.
Or maybe it's that we're maybe hearing things, addressing those with those families
Gotcha.
prior
That's-
to them.
Okay,
The
got it.
outreach piece, that's
Yeah,
good.
more like an outreach kind of thing.
Being proactive.
Yeah, perfect. That's what I just need to ask that question. Okay, and then what, on family relationships, what it's not is forgetting about our families, or it's not about making changes to satisfy the needs of one family. It's like you, especially in a district this size, like we over-responded to just one thing and alienated. Thank you. Okay. Anything else on 3.2? And then 3.3, community relationships. We have two big clusters and then two smaller. So the big clusters on community relationships is about engagement, showcasing, touring, open door, opportunity for involvement, engaging businesses, and inviting communities. So a lot of that was redundant, but that's why those are clustered together. And then, shocker, a whole section around listening and being transparent. There's a theme emerging. And then community relationship is about asking the community for help and that we do things better together. Community relationships, what it's not, is sacrificing the needs of the many based on, similar to the other one, based on one small group or opinion. And it's not forgetting that we're neighbors. And so I think that's a really, yeah, that's pretty cool. Anything else on community relations? I have not had an extended period of time to look at 4. Actually, I have had no time, but we're going to go with it. So for financial / stewardship, and 4.1 is comprehensive facility planning and improvement of existing facilities. So we have really 4 clusters with 3 or 4 sticky notes in each one. So the first one is really around listening and paying attention and awareness and observing it and making sure that we're listening and paying attention to what the needs are. Listening to the front line. Being clear about it. It's not, we're looking at it, we're listening to the staff. And then you've got one about process and cost benefit and inviting, and creating comfortable, inviting facilities. So this is really about how do we go about systematically on the process of understanding what's the right thing to spend at the right place at the right time, since we don't have unlimited resources. So it's a lot about listening and prioritizing systematically. And I would kind of lump that in with the next one too. So this there's a big theme here on, one comment is consolidation, constant evaluation of the usage of it, rethinking. So this is almost like the innovative thinking strand that's in this, which almost just connotes open mind. Like we've got to keep an open mind as we move forward. And then we have another cluster, proactive innovation. Those almost link up with the ones we were just talking about. Slight differences, this one's really about innovation, like really thinking about the school of tomorrow. And then 4.1 is supported through bond programs. So I guess the assumption there is that we've got to keep the communication open because, again, we're stewards. We're going to ask for help when we do this. So then it's not, it's our needs. I'm assuming it's not our wants. It's not a refusal to accept new ideas. It's not building and renovating facilities where there's not a big need. It's like just doing it just to do it. So it's careful analysis is kind of what that box is, and probably communication, transparency, and all that. It's not limiting community members' access, and it's not saying no to rental a facility. So that's kind of a specific one. All right. That's 4.1. That's a big, and was I right about the responses being a little bit different on those than the other three? Okay, so this is a really good start. So we'll start with that. Anything else on 4.1? Oh, it's labeled. Thank you for whoever labels your sticky note. All right, so 4.2, effectiveness and efficiency. So your biggest cluster is around appropriate use of funds, best practice, process-driven, proper planning. So a lot around processes and best practice. And the rest of them kind of shook out in other places. So listening, there's a theme around listening and paying attention and helping our community understand, but then listening to feedback. Make sure that it's not just efficient, but also effective. Another comment on consolidation of programs, and that's a fair place to put it, that's where this needs to go, that consideration, but you have to take that in the totality of this, what's our process? Like, so we have to have a process for those considerations. Clearly, well, that's another, it needs to be both effective and efficient. So we can't just get too far on one side or the other. And then the balancing act, which I would kind of put with the other ones on this balancing act between effectiveness and efficiency. So it's not poor budgeting, it's not spending just to spend, it's not one size fits all, it's not business as usual, it's not doing what we've always done, it's not doing what we've always done. There seems to be a theme. There seems to be a theme there. All right, that's 4.2. It's helpful.
Can I just add one comment? And when we talked about this last time, I know Dr. Mike in particular gave an example, but we're about efficiency and effectiveness. It's not necessarily 1 to 35 teacher ratio, because that's very efficient, but not effective for the student learning. And so we'll have to clearly articulate that as a board and then the staff, so people understand, because these words can be over 3, 4, 5 years from now. People might go, well, efficiency means this to me, or effectiveness means that to Mrs. Graham, Ms. Winkley. So we just need to make sure as we go forward, and I'm sure this will play out, that we're clear with the community and also their feedback, because it means a lot of things to lots of people, and it can skew what we do board-wise and then what Dr. Mike and them do. So I just think we know it now, but we're going to have to remember this weeks, months, and years from now as we go forward with this, I think, just because they're nebulous terms if we don't clearly define what we expect out of it.
Yeah, and I think as long to that end, the way you have effectiveness and efficiency, it may even be like an underline under and. Yeah. Like it's not one or the other. No. Like it's this Venn diagram. You have to have both of them, and we're looking at what falls out in the middle. So I think that's a really good underscoring of that and. Those never are decoupled. Efficiency and effectiveness always stay together. So then transparency and budget development. So this is all about transparency and communication and continuing the things we've done, explore if there are other ways to be even more transparent. explaining it in a way that the community understands it, clear, simple, concise. So that's a lot about the messaging of transparency, because it's just so inherently complicated. For some reason, I wound up on a Zoom on Sunday afternoon looking at a finance template. Trying to help a small school superintendent. I don't recommend that at all. I turned on golf and took a nap right after it. But the template, every time I look at it, that's like the spreadsheet that just all the numbers just plug in, and then you just see where you are. So we were looking, and they were not in a good place. That's why we were calling at 3 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon. So what it is, budget development transparency, is asking questions, creating opportunity where there are limitations, and then listening and what are the needs now that can't wait, or what is needed and what can wait.
Yeah.
The clarity between those two.
Hey, Dr. Gibson, before you go on, I like what you just said, and maybe you didn't say this, so I want some clarification. Transparency, I think we use that word a lot, but transparency in what I heard you just say is in putting it in terms that the public understands.
Correct.
Because I think a lot of times we're transparent. The problem is people don't know what that is, because it's not in, education is full of jargon and educationese, and it's out there, but nobody really understands it. So I'm thinking back, Deb, to that one piece about pennies and putting it in simple terms that becomes that. Is that kind of where, I want to make sure I understand it from y'all's perspective.
I would call it lost in translation, because
Yes.
I'll do, for example, before I was on the board, there were things I knew and things I thought I knew. Some of them I were correct, some of them were not correct. And you learn that you meet with everybody and you get in the process. But if we can be clear and concise and simple, was kind of what I wrote down, because that's what I was thinking of, 1 or 2 page, key infographics, just stuff to simplify it that is translatable. And you can't do it to everybody, but the big picture type thing, I think, would help the average community member. When we say we have a $580 million budget, 80-something% of staff, and
Right.
the cost. Okay, people can now go, I get that. Or we have a $1.3 billion bot. They can just kind of big chunks and clear and break it down. Or the pennies and the tax rate's a great conversation.
Right.
Those type of things, in my opinion, I think would be helpful to the average community member who will see this sporadically. And,
Right.
But I think it goes beyond just budgetary
Agreed.
and financial subject. I think it's in all subjects. When, we had different things that have come up throughout the year, and there's a process. And if people aren't seeking, and even when they are seeking the information to see the process and how things work, there are a lot of acronyms and there are a lot of assumptions, and they're not necessarily asking questions or calling to ask questions or emailing to ask questions. They're showing up angry, and they're posting on social media angry. That's how they're communicating. And it's just, we need to be very, very clear, not transparent, very clear and very concise about what we're trying to convey, or what the processes are, what the acronyms mean.
Yeah, and let's face it, transparency by this working definition of not just it's available. That's what you're saying. Like, we have a link, it's available. You should have read the 875-page
Right.
document. Okay.
Correct.
So, but to crystallize it basically in executive summaries, that's what we're
Yep.
talking about, is an extra step. And so it's extra work. That, it's the return on investment that you have to think about on that extra work.
value added.
Yeah, when you said it that way, Dr. Gibson, it really kind of it triggered something that Ms. Caldwell and I had been working on to discuss just different things. And I said, give it to me in something that somebody in the education world or would understand.
Yeah.
Because we're writing it with the assumption that the people that are receiving it have background knowledge or pieces of it, and so we say, well, we've done it, but we really didn't do
Yeah,
it. So
you're
to
right.
the
That's so
person that
good.
doesn't have it, that doesn't seem transparent. It seems like we've buried something. Well, we didn't, But what we didn't do was put it into terms that you can understand because we've buried it in our jargon and in our terms.
And I think there are those, a rare few, that want to see all 800 pages, but I link it off of your executive summary, right? Because that's transparent. Like if you want to read the whole thing, click here. That's where it is. But this is what all that means. I do, and there's such a correlation to being a listening and learning organization, which we now have a pattern for. It may take too long to listen and learn if you're having to peel back that they don't understand what you're trying to say.
And I liked in Shannon's remarks earlier this evening clarifying that, because we always get that when people see their tax statement, they think, how much paying to any ISD? Why are you all raising my taxes? And it's not the case, but they don't understand. They just see that big number and see where it's going and thinking that that's the entity that's doing that. And then secondly, making the point that because people will come and say, well, my tax money is paying your
Yes.
your salary.
Yes.
We don't get that.
No.
Yeah.
You know, but they don't folks don't understand that. They assume that, these are not paid positions.
I would say, Ms. Wilson, I agree with you. If we were that proactive communication and give them the 30-second elevator speech or the executive summary, and you can simply say tax rate, tax, and how the process works in one page, then it answers hopefully most of their questions, and it cuts out a lot of the lack of clarity that you were talking about, Ms. Winkley. We know what the process is, and it is a clear process that's clearly defined, but the average person doesn't, so that we answer the questions because we proactively have put the one page, or however we choose to communicate it most effectively. I think that will do a lot, answer more questions than create more answers.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the message that gets out there and that keeps getting generated or repeated is the wrong message, even though we give them the information.
But by having that one page easy to understand infographic, or that they can forward, and then if they really want to dig into it, they can. I think we can help eliminate some of the miscommunication out. I mean, at some point you can't help everything, but obviously they go here, it's clear one page answer with a couple pictures or whatever is appropriate depending on the
That's
subject.
a really good point.
Yeah, and I'll just add this. I think we need to do it when the stakes aren't as high.
Yeah.
If we're going to try to combat the misinformation, when we just got our tax bill, I'm not sure we're listening at that moment, right? And so I think back to Deb when I first became interim superintendent, and I walked into a room, and you'll remember this very clearly. They said, you're the new guy. You must want a bond. That's the only time you speak to us. But see, that was really telling in that room. You're remembering it, Dan. And boy, it resonated with me because I said, if that's the only time we come to this group when we want something, well, no wonder they're not receptive to me. I need to come to them when the stakes are low and build, hey, if you want, let's have a discussion. And what we walked away with, for those of you that were around then, that's when we took, because they were, you guys were talking about, and somebody wrote, this isn't in shop class. And I said to Ms. Caldwell, to that group, it definitely is shop class, because they were convinced we did no CTE. Because what they said, to our point earlier, when I said CTE, they had no, when I said vocational education, now it hit home. And so it's understanding, and you heard this, Ms. Grona and Ms. Huey, or you may not have heard it from a parent. When Brandy, what was her term that we used, that you said it's something, simplexity? But what she did to the people in L&E that day, one of the ladies came up afterwards and said, that made sense because it was in English and I understood it. It's the first time I've heard about it explained in that manner, right? And so that's that piece is, one, we have to get better about how we say what we say, but two, we have to go to people before we have an ask. We can't go to speak about taxes the only time when they're angry. We got to go out and try to educate them in ways.
You reminded me that I just remember finally saying, whenever we say CTE, just put in parentheses, previously referred to as vocational. Because it was just, it's just like, no, that's not, but that seemed to solidify that, oh, okay, they're talking about the old, but I bet you don't have wood shop.
But-
Yes, it's actually,
Well,
we
but,
do,
and
we
see
have
what,
metal fabrication.
but what we did in that case is we took one gentleman from that room and actually toured the facility
Oh, that's great.
and showed them all of the offerings. And at the end of it, they said, I'm going to go back and tell them that, I can't remember, he was not, the way he framed it, I'm not sure I could do it justice, but basically it's, I'm going to go back and tell them to stop talking, that you do have it, that it's much more abundant than what you believe it to be. So not only did we listen, but we educated and built an ambassador to go out and help us educate others. So we stopped, we listened, we reacted, we did something, and then we moved forward with it. In fact, I've asked Ms. Caldwell to reach back out to that gentleman to show him some other stuff.
So the last comment on 4.3, it's perfect for what we're saying. It's an is not, and it says budget development and transparency is not secrecy. So there you go. That's like a really good, Okay, you did well for our concluding.
Oh, but
Yes,
but
ma'am.
that brings up, okay, we're talking about the transparency and the no secrecy, and we know that, and we believe it, and we do it, and we work hard to try to explain things. And yeah, we may slip into the jargon occasionally and thinking that people are hearing and understanding us, but we're coming into, okay, maybe we've made a few steps forward in that, but we're coming into a time right now, an election time, when we know that we're going to be dealing with misinformation and misperceptions and untruths or whatever, and that just compounds. That puts us, for the 2 steps forward, we may be taking 3 steps back.
Yeah,
How do we deal with that lack of, we are not secretive.
I think, Mrs. G, this is what my thought is, and obviously, once we get this in place, and we've now translated with all the stakeholders, from the community to the teachers and staff, and when you can have everybody in the district, you can go to any teacher or, janitor, or anyone on the staff, and then go, hey, I know there's 4 priorities. They may not remember every word. And they go, we know we're doing this, and we become very process-driven. It'll answer so many questions, because I think it's not going to happen in the short term. I think until we get this fully implemented. But by doing this strategic process, and I mean, Dr. Gibson, you've seen it multiple places, but having been in a previous organization, once you get it in place, it becomes very easy, because everybody knows what all the parents will know. Teachers will know, the staff will know, even the community members, like Dr. Mike was talking about, that 75% of our community don't have kids in school that pay taxes, and they'll know that we're doing this stuff. But it's going to take a little while to get there, I think, honestly. I don't know it's going to happen in the short term, and that's always a challenge.
Yeah, I think the CTE is a perfect example, because, like they're saying, oh, it doesn't even exist in schools. We all know that it does. The terminology is different. And no matter how much Deb and Dr. Micah work at getting the word out, we can't seem to break that wall of, oh, they're not being open and honest with us.
With more of these quality, like we're talking about, these engagements with the community and that stuff, I think over time it will. And then, of course, obviously, when we get those responses, we have the 30-second elevator speech or the simple stuff that the staff may develop to say, hey, no, we really do. It's just something you knew as wood shop or auto shop or VOTEC. Now it's called career technical. And we have however many industry-based certifications, and that'll be our part translating for them. But in the short term, it's going to take time. Nothing's going to move fast. But if we're consistent in our messaging and have that strategic plan in place, we'll all be able to pull this out of our purses or pockets and go, this is what we're all operating on. It's a very consistent process, I think.
And it's going.
Hey, Dr. Gibson, how many years did we talk about?
Well, I mean,
but we said, when you and I spoke about this scorecard, we said it's going to take like 2 years to get it.
Minimum. I mean,
really, right.
In 8 years, we were still feeling.
2 years minimum to really get it pushed out in a manner that it starts, that people start to refer to it.
Right.
It doesn't
So
become yet something else on a wall.
And that's exactly right. So it's launched. It takes a couple of years to launch.
Yep.
Then you have to live it. That's what we're saying here, and repeatedly and systematically. And that's why typically, to kind of recap something, usually you do these in 4-year increments. but you don't do a wholesale change after 4 years because you've really just gotten it very systematic. So it's almost like a tweak after 4 years, and then after 8 years, you back up and look at it again. You might tweak it a little bit, or you might say, wow, we got that stuff right back in, what is this, 2022? And, but something, as someone said, we don't even know we don't know on some of the things but the objectives, if we get that correct, then 8 years from now, it may still be viable with just some tweaks. The key is, if you look at the bottom of your scorecard, the board is going to approve the priorities and the objectives, not the actions. I know I'm the broken record on that, but that's the reason you don't approve the actions, because they're going to need that flexibility to constantly monitor. If you're going to be a listening and learning organization, they're going to listen, nope, that's not working, now we're going to do this. They're going to report that to you, but they're not going to have to ask you to re-adopt your strategic action list because you're not adopting that. So they'll constantly be reporting it to you, but you don't have to vote on it. Then I know that it's going to feel like this thing's getting kind of blown. I'm repeating myself here, but it's purposeful. So it's going to feel like it's getting long. Ms. Yuri, to your point, at the end of the day, though, you're looking at that column 2, and we're saying that's what's most important. Like, that's the stuff. So, okay, let's say it's 15 before we're finished. That sounds like a lot. But in the absence of a list of 15, there's a universe of 15,000 things every day that people are presenting as the most important thing to be on his calendar tomorrow. And you can't not deal with some of those, but at least gives a true north to we've agreed, the tactical team and the strategic team have agreed these are the most important things. So you have this compass, as your logo, which is great. I mean, it's almost like now we have the compass. It's column 2 and column 1. Like, that's our north. Okay.
Because to Dr. Gibson's point, what you're doing is telling us what to say yes to, but equally important is what to say no to, or to what to stop. Because if you've said it's not a priority and we're looking through the organization, we're going, well, then we're going to quit that because that's not in alignment with what the strategic and the tactical group said. So and we just start. So it's not about, I'm just going to use you, Mr. Hillier. Mr. Hillier comes to ask me, he's an employee, hey, I need $10,000 to do whatever. And I look at this and I say, okay, where does that fit?
Yeah.
And he says, well, it kind of fits under, and I say, well, then we're not going to do that because that's not collectively what we've agreed to focus on. And so now it's not, so now Mr. Hilliard leaves and goes, he just doesn't like me. That's why he's not going to give me the money, right? It's, well, no, it was grounded in the work. And so it's not about I like you or don't like you, or, hey, I want to do something nice for you because you did something nice for me. It's, this is our work and this is what we're committing to. So as resources become more scarce, right, it just helps us funnel down into this is where the precious dollars that we do have to spend, that's where they're going to be spent. And we're not going to spend them over here.
Or the reverse could happen. I'm going to use Mr. Hilliard again. He could come and he can look at the plan and say, okay, let me find something that fits that I want to do, and then come and say, hey, can I have $10,000 for this? And see that, okay, that fits. Okay, that makes sense.
That's right. There's strategic alignment with the idea is what we're saying. And that's like a good first filter on. In SCUC, y'all go to TASB, and 7 of you go to 7 classes, so that's 49 great ideas, that come back and get dropped on the superintendent's desk, and best thing ever, according to the person that presented. And sometimes I was presenting, so I believe that, but still, you need a filter for where does it fit. So I love that, I think almost like the cost of admission when you come back from TASB conferences, this is a 3.2 idea. And I've given it this much scrutiny. It lines up with 3.2, or which I'm just making up numbers. But anyway, that's a really good point. Okay, everybody good with this is a great value add tonight. You get themes emerged, right? So we saw themes emerge that we'll now be working on to give back to Dr. Micah as he starts on the journey of additional listening and learning. I'm assuming y'all will be looking at those drafts. So does everybody have at least 4 sticky notes left? At least 4. So this is a speed round wrap-up. We will get you more if you need. Okay, so the quality tool is an is not, that we basically, so what is it not? So some people tweak that to be an is not, why. So what is it and what is it not and why is it important? So we kind of skipped the why is it important because we felt like it was going to be a lot to debrief all at one time. So not on every one of these, but just on priority 1. So if you don't mind, just put P1 on your sticky note. That's enough of a label. And write down why this work that we talked about in priority 1, students, is important. 30 seconds, speed round. I'm going to ask you to share out. Okay, it doesn't have to be a complete sentence, just a complete thought. Why is the work around students as a priority important? Miss Hugh, are you okay if we just work this way? Would you, and again, doesn't have to be a complete sentence, just a thought. So why is this work important?
They are our heart, our soul, our reason, our world.
All right. This one.
They need to know that we support their academic success and their well-being 100%.
Okay. Ms. Grona.
That was something like that to ensure the student success.
Ms. Williams.
Students are why we exist. They are our purpose, educating them. That's our purpose.
All right, thank you. Ms. Bradley.
I just wrote success.
All right. Ms. Williams.
We need to be held accountable. We are striving for student success, and we're trying to create a global citizen.
All right.
I just said it's our core focus and mission as a board, and it's important that we provide the best opportunities for each student to get that quality education and maximize whatever their God-given talent is, because we exist as a school board for the students and their education.
Okay. So is everybody comfortable with leaving that with us? So stick it up, stick it up. Just put it up on top. So what we're going to do is capture those and then go back to column 1 to see if there's some themes in those words, and there were, that may need to be captured on your column 1. Okay, same thing for column 2, 30 seconds. Well, separate piece of paper, sorry, these are going to get put into different, so give me a separate sticky note, put P2 on it. We talked about what it is, and we talked about what it's not. Now tell me why it's important. P2, why is it important? right, Mr. Hilliard, I'm reversing order, so you're first. So
All right.
here we come. Y'all just keep going if you don't mind.
Why it matters, having that quality staff with their opportunities for their own professional growth and development then translates into that great academic experience for the kids, which it all comes back to why we're here, the kids. So great staff provides that reason that the parents want their kids to be educated here in Northeast.
Okay.
We need the best. We want the best leaders, and we need well-rounded employees, staff, employees.
I just said without our staff and their constant engagement, puts our students at a disadvantage.
Well, I was a little basic and to the point. Staff is the instrument we use to educate the students.
I like it.
I'm not sure I got it right. I said to make staff feel valued.
I think there's a vein in that.
Our staff is the backbone of this district. They are the faces our children see every day.
They give their best to create our best.
Okay. So I'm going to collect those, Dr. Micah and I, and you know the drill. Priority 3, stakeholders, our family, students, and community groups. Miss Judy, when you're ready, you're first.
They're the reason we are successful.
We are stronger together.
Help all groups understand our why and engage them to be our partner.
Again, I was basic and to the point. Stakeholders provide support.
Yes, ma'am.
They're what sustain us and hold us responsible.
They are our family, and we need support on all ends.
I wrote, they're the reason we as a board sit here. We represent those communities and parents to guide the district and the student growth, and they give us the perspective we need for that development of all the students.
Okay. Same drill on perspective 4 or priority 4.
That's hard.
And don't go anywhere.
I don't know what the why is for 4.
Mr. Hilliard, we're going to let you start on
Okay.
priority 4.
All right. I'm not done writing, but I'll go with what I've got and I'll finish off. For me, I put down accountability and that thoughtful planning that aligns to our key district needs, kind of what Dr. Micah was saying. It ties to the needs and what we're actually doing and what to do and not do.
Okay.
Our needs are always evolving, and we need to determine what's better for our students.
Okay.
Say we've been entrusted to protect and grow the resources that we.
Financial accountability and resources to get the job done, i.e. educating.
Okay.
Hold us accountable to taxpayers.
So we can continue our responsibilities in serving our students.
And meeting future challenges.
Okay, thank you. So again, those now are clustered as we think about a potential statement for your priority 1, your column 1, or your priorities. These are these are the key words and phrases that may go into your column 1. And so, anyway, that's what you just did. So you just provided that. So I want, in closing, I want to share something so that on that last one, and then I've heard it throughout tonight, I've heard accountability, 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 and then I just heard responsibility. And I want to draw a distinction between those words, and then when you're ready to adjourn, but trustees, I think there's a lot of work on display back there. Are y'all okay? Ms. Caldwell just said if you could get like in the middle of it and let her get a photo of all that stuff back behind you. I think it has good Twitter feel to it as I turn around and look at it. I think it would be very impressive. But I'm not making a statement against accountability, the word accountability. And if I'm repeating myself from the previous time, I'm doing it on purpose. So one of the challenges right now with the term accountability is that it's almost been co-opted to mean external accountability. It's like a lot of the pushback that's happening, it's not like when y'all were using it, like you were wanting to say we take our internal accountability, right? Like we feel this accountability. But the concept's just been co-opted so bad that it just means external accountability. So it's a thought. I mean, I view this like in a hierarchy. So the lowest is external accountability. The next one is internal accountability. So I'm taking internal accountability, and then the next one's responsibility. You know, like we're taking responsibility for the resources. So I just want to I like the strategic tactical, and then I like the word responsibility. Because in essence, if you look at that scorecard, you're creating basically a community-based responsibility. I'm not even going to say accountability system, but it really is, right? There's pieces in here of what the state or federal government might say needs to be as a part of an accountability system, but you've developed a community-based, or you're about to you got the framework to take out to the community. So if anyone ever says, I think we need to develop community-based accountability, in a year, y'all are going to go, got it, working on it. We're deploying it right now. So I want you to feel like we're really good about that. That external accountability, internal accountability, and responsibility, and I'm going to close with this, is the NASA story. And I can't remember if I told it to you, but 3 custodians working at NASA, like right down in Mission Command, and all 3 of them were interviewed on the first mission to the moon, and all 3 of them were asked the same question: what's your job? So the first one said, I'm cleaning up after all these slobs. So that's external accountability. The next one said, I'm cleaning up after the engineers so they can do their job better. Well, that's internal accountability, right? And then the third one said, I'm putting a man on the moon. That's responsibility. Like, I see my piece in this, no matter what and it's a 4,000 step process. I've got 2 steps in it. Clean it up, make sure it's ready for the engineers when they come back. But my 2 out of the 4,000 are very important, and I'm going to take them seriously. So anyway, I'll leave y'all with that, and thank you for letting me be part of this tonight.
Thank you for coming and doing this. I feel like we've really accomplished a lot.
Yeah, well, look behind me. I mean, you have a lot of stuff and good clarification. So
thanks
now
to
we'll
your
work
facilitation and everything. I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 8:27.